If you're someone looking to get better in the sport of HYROX, strength is fundamental to actually increasing your performance across all abilities. I see many different people within the sport actually training strength incorrectly. If you're someone which goes into the gym and think you're reliant on high intensity within your strength training, you may be missing the mark completely when it actually becomes integral to getting you better and faster times. A lot of you may be thinking that yes, HYROX is a sport of running. However, the cross correlation that strength has to actually getting you better and also increasing your longevity in training cycles will play an utmost important role in where you want to be within the sport itself. Some of the prerequisites we look at for strength is at least 1.5 times body weight back squat as an example, and at least 2 to 2.5 on the deadlift. My name's Josh Davis. I'm an online coach for my business 265 training, which I run with my other half and business partner Amelie, and we've helped thousands of HYROX athletes get better within the sport. So your first question may be, why strength train for HYROX? Now, we look at strength as a prerequisite for injury prevention. There's actually no better way to keep injuries at bay, because strength training alters tendons, ligaments, things like bone density, and it's not just muscles which see a really nice effect to actually help us perform better. It also keeps those injuries at bay by making us more robust. If we look at it from a running efficiency standpoint, if we're stronger to propel our body weight forward each foot strike, it will come at less energy expenditure or metabolic cost, which allows us to propel ourselves forward with greater ease. Therefore, we can run quicker paces at less energy expenditure for longer periods of time. Because HYROX is a mixed modal sport, it's going to be reliant on things like higher muscular fibers, which are fast fatiguing, and it's really important that we train them and get them stronger to cope with things like the sled pushes and the lunges and the burpee broad jumps, so we can actually keep our running splits as priority. As we know, HYROX is a sport of predominantly running. However, the mixed modal elements are really important to be able to cope with, to make sure we can still run consistently and efficiently to where we want to be. Therefore, strength underpins many of these things and also helps us cope with the ability to recycle lactate as fuel, which is going to help you really dig deeper at the back end of your races. So I'm going to take you through a list which I feel is fundamental to walk into your strength sessions and be able to achieve. And I'm going to start off with range of motion. I see a lot of HYROX athletes, especially in movements like the squat, half squatting. Now, if we look at having a judge at our competitions, it's of utmost importance we're practicing the movement patterns which happen at competition. Now, for something like the squat, the range of motion being below that parallel position, we want to be able to get stronger through full range of motion, because we get greater muscular activation and a greater return on things like strength, as well as our muscular responses, which is ultimately going to make us look and feel better. Range of motion also drives flexibility, which we see a deficiency with most people coming into a sport like HYROX, and we want to have sufficient flexibility through movements which also keep injuries at bay, of course, but also allow us to actually hit positions which may help us push the sled a little bit quicker, or maybe hit a position in the burpee broad jump which is a little bit more efficient than if we had flexibility issues. The next thing I'm going to talk about is reps. Reps for strength training is fundamental to the adaptations which we want to actually achieve. Strength training, typically reps sit below the 7 rep mark from ranges 1 to 6. But if we're looking at actually building a base first, and this tends to happen in the off season, higher repetitions are fundamental to muscular growth, and the greater the muscular size, the more opportunity we have to actually be stronger. So repetitions close to season can be low, and therefore we'd have less volume and therefore less localized fatigue, so we can perform better. But furthest away from season, repetitions may be high because we see the greatest adaptation in the muscular architecture, so how the muscle looks, but also the things like the tendons and the bone density also have some great benefits there too. But there's a lot of fatigue which happens with those high repetitions, but this is an opportunity to practice furthest away from season, and then as we go closer to season, we're moving closer towards full expression and what the sport would look like itself. So less sport specific and more sport specific, or very sport specific. And we really want to shift our repetitions to maximal strength, because maximal strength will mean we can rep out higher repetitions at higher or lower weights, because our ability to move those loads efficiently becomes a lot easier and a lower percentages of our relative 1 rep max. Another thing which is really important within our strength training is rest. Even if we have a superset, many of us are rushing through and trying to chase stimulus. Because strength is neural meaning how the brain signals to the muscles, we're actually not going to feel too much stimulus from the muscles themselves. That doesn't mean it doesn't feel hard. It means the pump, which we may feel from the high repetitions, is less predominant within our strength training. So when we're strength training, that rest to actually help your glycogen stores and creatine stores recover has to become fundamental to the session to actually be able to lift those maximal expression loads and therefore make us stronger and have more signaling to the brain, to the muscles. If our rest is too low, we tend to hit failure, or the reps can actually get very, very ugly and fairly unsafe. And we want to promote safety, especially in our higher percentages where we know technique is really going to be tested. When we're looking at maximal expression strength, we want anywhere from 2, maybe up to 5 minutes for our higher training ages between sets. Strength sessions should feel quite low and slow between sets, where if we're looking at our hypertrophy phase or that muscular endurance phase, rest can actually be relatively low, and that's where you'll get all that metabolic byproducts into the muscles and full of blood, and you get that nice pump feeling. So that's the differential in our rest periods, and they both play a fundamental role to making you better in the sport, but they should be used sparingly as well to actually help you get better. And like I said at the start of the video, muscular endurance, especially in the lower body for HYROX, is fundamental to the sessions, but it's still important that we train strength maximally and submaximally in things like muscular endurance, but those rest periods should and would look very different to make sure we're actually getting better at the things we need to get better at. Now, focusing on the things we need to get better at, you may be asking the question, running or strength, and it purely comes down to the individual, or we can actually train them concurrently, so together in the same day for some of us who are maybe doing double days. When we look at things like strength and conditioning, they both interfere with each other. So you should be asking yourself the question, do I need to be stronger? Is it the mixed modal things I struggle with, not the running within my training? Therefore, maybe I'm looking at actually focusing on strength, and strength would be the first thing you focused on for each of your sessions for the day, and then maybe the running or the conditioning second, as we're looking to upregulate the thing which is most important first, order of priority. And vice versa for something like the running. Maybe your running takes priority first, you're focusing on the volume, and then the strength comes second. If you are training concurrently and look at the research, 6 to 8 hours between session is optimal to actually minimize interference, so you can actually steady decline and get better at both. Just expect slightly slower rates of adaptations if you are training concurrently versus individually conditioning and strength. It's really important to focus around the benefits of strength and the effects it has on HYROX. As you move closer to a higher level or even a pro division, you've got to remember that these fundamentals of strength and conditioning are going to be your biggest bang for your buck on return of investment, especially when it comes to order of your training. For those of us which are new, the order of training won't matter too much because your body is like a sponge looking to absorb anything and turn it into gains in fitness, strength, power, body composition, etc. But those of us who are getting into the higher training ages and having some great exposure in the sport, it becomes really important that we're training as we should to drive specific areas which we're weak in. Strength training for a lot of us has to be specific to where we need actual training itself. If you enjoyed this video and you've got any questions, hit me up in the comments and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. If you check out our website 265training.com, we've got some exciting things coming up in the future for you guys to get involved with. We've got a pavement stompers club coming up in central London, as well as a track club, and you guys are more than welcome to get involved if you're in the local area.